The wind moved slowly across the wide field of Valorian. Dust rose and fell in soft waves, covering the broken walls and silent towers. For 7 long years, Queen Althea had looked from her high balcony every evening, waiting to see a sign of her lost daughter. People said that the princess had died when a storm tore their flying ship from the sky. Others said she had been taken far away by men who lived beyond the border storms. Althea never believed them. She felt in her heart that her daughter was alive somewhere. Far away, beyond the safe lands of Valorian, a man named Daniel Hurst worked alone among the remains of the old world. He was an engineer who fixed machines that others had thrown away. Daniel was not a rich man, but he was clever and kind. His hands were rough from work, and his eyes were always watching for pieces of metal that still had life in them. He lived in a small camp beside the ruins of an ancient city. Every day he searched the fallen towers for useful parts. There were no others near him, only the sound of wind, broken walls, and far echoes. One afternoon, while the sun burned low behind gray clouds, Daniel found a strange piece of ground near a half-buried building. The soil there was soft, like something had moved under it recently. He dug with a broken shovel and soon reached a sheet of dull glass. Beneath it was a small capsule made of smooth metal, shaped like a narrow coffin. It was still glowing faintly with a deep blue light. He pressed his hand to the surface and felt a slow beat, like a weak heartbeat from inside. Daniel worked for hours to open it without breaking the old locks. When the metal finally gave way, cool air rushed out, and he stepped back in surprise. Inside the capsule lay a young woman. Her skin was pale and cold, and her long hair was tangled like threads of gold dust. A faint symbol appeared on the ring around her wrist, an old royal mark of Valorian, the mark that had not been seen for years. She was breathing, faintly, very faintly. Daniel quickly wrapped her in his old coat and carried her to his camp. The fire in his small shelter threw a soft light on her face. He gave her water drop by drop until her lips moved. She whispered a single word he could not understand and fell quiet again. For 3 days, Daniel cared for the girl. On the 4th morning, she awoke with a start. Her eyes were clear, but full of fear. She could not remember where she was or who had saved her. Her first words were slow and uncertain. "Where is the skyship?" she asked. "Where is my mother?" Daniel sat beside her, speaking gently. "You were lost in the ruins," he said. "I found you in a capsule, buried under the ground. You are safe now, but there was nothing else there. No ship, no people." She looked at him for a long time. "My name is Leora," she said at last. "Leora of Valorian." The name struck him like a spark. Everyone had heard the story of Princess Leora, who disappeared years ago with the Queen's fleet. Most called it a legend meant to give people hope during the hard winters. Daniel did not tell her what he was thinking. He only smiled softly. "Leora," he repeated, "then you must have come a long way." Over the next few days, she grew stronger. She watched him repair old machines and asked many questions about the world outside the borders. He told her that the old kingdoms had fallen apart and many people now struggled among the wastes. She listened quietly, a shadow of sadness crossing her face. At night, when the fire burned low, Leora often stared at the stars. Daniel noticed how she clasped her hands, as if praying to someone far away. Once she whispered, "Mother, I will come home. We'll find the way back." Daniel promised himself he would help her find that way, though he did not yet know why. He only knew that she did not belong to the ruins and emptiness around them. She carried a light that made even the broken machines seem less hopeless. Far away in the royal city, Queen Althea kept a candle burning in her window each night. The servants whispered that she spoke to the flame, calling her daughter's name into the quiet halls. No one answered her prayers. Yet on the night when Daniel found the capsule, the faint glow of the candle flared brighter, though there was no wind, and so the long silence of 7 years began to stir. In a forgotten corner of the broken world, a mother's hope and a stranger's kindness had met. Neither Althea nor Daniel yet knew that this small meeting would soon shake the kingdoms and bring a new dawn to Valorian. When he looked back, he saw Leora standing near the fire, staring at the horizon. Her hair moved in the wind, and her eyes were brighter than before. She said quietly, "I remember a place with white towers and gardens. My mother used to walk with me by a lake with silver water." Her voice trembled. "It feels like a dream. When I try to see the faces around me, everything breaks apart. But I know one thing, Daniel. I must go home." Daniel wiped his hands on his shirt. "The border storms are still strong," he told her. "No one crosses them now. The roads were destroyed. Even traders avoid that path. But maybe we can find another way?" Leora looked at him with calm trust. "You would help me?" she asked. "I will try," Daniel replied. "You would have died out here without help. It would be wrong to stop now." Over the next days, Daniel repaired an old transport craft that had been buried under stone. Its frame was rusted, the engine broken, and the power cells nearly dead. She remembered her father's gentle voice, her mother's crown. It's the celebration of flight when the new fleet of airships was launched. She remembered the storm that had torn the ship apart and her fall into darkness. Each day she told Daniel a little more, and he listened quietly, never questioning. He found her memories fascinating yet painful. Sometimes he saw her sitting by the fire at night, her face turned toward the faint starlight, whispering to herself as if to keep her memories alive. He had never met anyone like her before. She spoke with kindness, yet there was strength in her voice that made him want to do better. To fix what had been broken in the world. When the craft was finally ready, Daniel tested the engine. It gave a rough sound, but started to hum softly. Leora smiled for the first time since he had found her. "It sounds like a heartbeat," she said. "It is alive." They packed food, water, and the small tools Daniel always carried. Before they left, he looked once more at the camp, the broken towers, and the empty plains. "I have lived here for years," he said with a sigh. "But this place has never felt like home. Maybe the world beyond the storms will give both of us something new." Their craft rose slowly, shaking at first, then steadied. They flew over fields of gray dust, rivers that glowed faintly under the sun, and towns where broken machines still stood like silent giants. Sometimes they saw groups of people gathering metal from old wrecks. When the people noticed the flying ship, they pointed and waved. It had been many years since anyone had seen a working craft. At one ruined city, they stopped to rest. Children came running to see the strange machine. Daniel gave them clean water from his filters, and Leora shared small pieces of food. That night, she told Daniel, "I will face my mother again only when I am strong enough to help her. If the kingdom is dying, we must bring it hope. You know how to repair the old world." "I will learn from you," Daniel nodded. "If hope can be built with hands and courage, then we will build it." The next morning, they left again, following the river that led toward the great mountains. The air grew cold, and the clouds darkened. Storms flashed in the distance, marking the border to Alorian. Leora felt a strange pull in her chest, as though the winds were calling her home. Daniel tightened his coat and checked the ship's controls. "Once we cross that line," he said, "there is no turning back." "I do not wish to turn back," she answered, her voice steady. As thunder rolled across the sky, their craft entered the swirling clouds. Light and shadow twisted around them. The border storm roared, but she did not flinch. For the first time since their meeting, Daniel saw not just a lost girl, but the spirit of a queen returning to claim her world. And deep within the palace far across the land, Queen Althea awoke from uneasy sleep. The candle by her window swayed, and its flame flared upward without reason. She rose from her bed, her heart beating faster. She felt something she had not felt in years, a warmth, faint but real. Without knowing why, she whispered, "Leora," far away, through thunder and wind. The lost daughter whispered the same word. "Mother." The storm carried their voices across the dark sky, as if the world itself had begun to listen once more. Rain poured over the mountains as Daniel and Leora crossed into the lands of Alorian. The flying craft trembled under heavy clouds, but Daniel's hands stayed steady on the controls. Leora kept her eyes ahead, watching flashes of light split the sky. She felt both fear and hope. The thought of seeing her homeland made her heart race, yet she knew the kingdom she left behind might no longer be the same. When the storm finally faded, they saw the wide valley below. Rivers glittered like silver threads, and old towers stood half buried in green. Once this valley had been full of music and light. Now, smoke rose from villages, and soldiers guarded every road. Daniel guided the ship down near a forest edge. They hid the craft under a cover of thick leaves. He checked the energy meters and sighed. "Power is low. We will need to go on foot for a while," he said. Leora nodded. "The capital is not far. We can reach it in 2 days if we follow the river." Daniel knelt beside it and studied the rusty gears. Within an hour, the machine stirred again, and clear water flowed. The farmers cheered, clapping him on the back and blessing his name. Leora stood beside him, smiling softly. For the first time, the townspeople looked at her as one of them, not just a stranger. Word spread quickly, a traveling pair who brought back machines and hope. People began to wait for them along the road. Some carried broken tools. Others brought stories of injustice. Daniel repaired what he could, and Leora spoke words of courage to the weary crowd. Her voice had a calm power that drew others close. She reminded them of the promise Alorian once held, when its rulers cared for every life under the silver towers. As the days went on, Daniel and Leora gathered a few companions, a healer named Clara, a soldier named Owen, and a farmer's boy called Leo, who insisted on helping them guide travelers to safety. Together they moved from town to town, fixing power lines and pumps, driving away looters who tried to take supplies. Daniel used his knowledge of old machines, while Leora's leadership gave everyone purpose. At night, their small group sat around the fire. One evening, while resting near the hills, they saw smoke far in the east. A village was under attack. Without thinking, they ran toward it. When they arrived, warlords had set fire to houses and were forcing people to leave. Daniel shouted for the villagers to run for cover, while Owen and Clara helped the wounded. Leora stood in the path of the raiders, her face lit by flames. "Leave these people," she commanded. Her voice carried through the chaos like a bell. The raiders hesitated for a moment, confused by the sight of this fearless woman standing before them. Then one of them laughed and drew his blade. Before he could take another step, Daniel hurled a smoke flare that exploded near his feet, blinding them all with white light. The raiders stumbled, coughing. The villagers, seeing their chance, turned and fought back. Within minutes, the attackers fled into the dark. When it was over, the villagers surrounded Leora and Daniel, calling them heroes. Leora told them to save their thanks for the day their kingdom was whole again. As they rebuilt homes through the night, Daniel looked at her and saw how natural her strength had become. She no longer seemed like a lost princess, but a true leader. At dawn, Clara pointed to the distant horizon. "The capital lies beyond those hills," she said. Leora felt her heart tighten.
Ah.
"Then we are close," she said softly. The sun was bright on the day Daniel and Leora saw the towers of the capital rise in the distance. The white stones still glowed faintly, though many parts of the walls were cracked. Banners hung torn, and the once shining gates stood half open. For Leora, every step closer filled her with both joy and fear. The city she had dreamed of for so long looked tired and wounded. Daniel felt the same heaviness, but also pride. The people walking behind them had grown from a few into hundreds. Farmers, workers, soldiers, and children marched together through the dust, following the princess who had given them hope, though most still did not know her true name. At the edge of the city, guards came out to stop them. They wore dull armor and looked uncertain. Daniel stepped forward and raised his hands. "We come in peace," he said. "We bring workers and families seeking shelter. We ask to speak with the queen." The captain of the guard studied them carefully. He looked at Leora, saw the calm strength in her face, and hesitated. Then he lowered his sword. "The queen has been waiting for word from the border. She will want to see you." They were led through streets lined with broken fountains and dark windows. People watched from doorways. Some whispered shy greetings. Others stepped forward with tears in their eyes when they saw how many citizens had returned under one banner. The city that had been silent now hummed with soft murmurs. When they reached the palace gates, the great bells began to ring, calling the court to gather. The sound echoed through the empty halls. The queen's council stood around her, their faces pale. Queen Althea rose from her throne as the wide doors opened. Her golden robe flowed behind her, and her eyes searched the crowd. For a moment, she could not breathe. There, walking into the hall, was a young woman she had seen only in memories. Leora stopped a few steps away and bowed her head. "Mother," she said softly, "I am home." For a long moment the queen did not move. Then tears filled her eyes, and she ran down the steps, taking her daughter into her arms. The courtiers gasped, then stood in silence. The queen wept openly, holding Leora close, as if afraid to let go. Daniel turned his eyes away, giving them the moment they had both waited for. Some of the guards wiped their faces quietly behind their helmets. "I dreamed of this day so many nights," she said. "I feared I would never see you again." She touched Leora's face, as if to be sure she was real. "How did you survive? Who kept you safe?" Leora turned to Daniel. "He found me when I was lost," she said. "He saved me and brought me home. Without him, I would have been gone forever." The queen stepped toward Daniel. "You saved my child. How can I repay you?" Daniel bowed slightly. "You owe me nothing, Your Majesty. The people of Alorian need more than reward. They need a reason to believe again. That is what your daughter gave them." Silence filled the room. The queen looked at him for a long time, seeing not a soldier or nobleman, but an ordinary person who carried quiet courage. She turned to the council. "This man speaks the truth," she said. "Our strength is not in crowns or walls, but in hearts like his. We will rebuild this kingdom not through orders, but through care." Later that evening, the city held a gathering in the great square. Fires burned in iron bowls, and music returned for the first time in years. Leora stood beside her mother on the balcony, looking at the people cheering below. Daniel stayed near the edge of the crowd, watching with quiet joy. He felt a strange peace settle inside him. When Leora came down from the balcony, she found him by the fountain. "You could stand by us," she said. "The people are waiting to thank you." "They do not need to thank me. They have you. That is enough." The sound of celebration rolled across the city. Children danced, and families embraced. The queen sat on her throne again, but this time, her face held warmth instead of sorrow. She ordered food and supplies sent to every village that had suffered. Old divisions between nobles and commoners began to fade. Before midnight, Leora found Daniel again. Streets were lit with lanterns. "Tomorrow, we begin to rebuild the energy gates," she said. "You have the knowledge we need." Daniel nodded. "Then I will teach what I know. Machines can work again, but they must serve people, not control them." She smiled gently. "Then Alorian will not just rise, will live." As they walked together through the palace garden, Leora stopped and looked up at the stars. "For many years I wondered why I survived when others did not," she said. "Now I understand. It was not just to come home. It was to bring kindness back to the world. Daniel looked at her, and in that quiet moment, he saw what she had become. No longer a lost princess, but a beacon of hope. The kingdom of Elorian had found its light again. And in that light, the memory of loss began to fade, replaced by the beauty of what had been saved. Morning came with a calm sky and a soft wind that carried the scent of rain and flowers. In the heart of Elorian, the sound of hammers and voices rose together. After many silent years, the city was alive again. Daniel walked through the busy streets, watching workers repair walls and children laugh as they carried stones lighter than they could manage. Everywhere he looked, people were helping one another. It felt like the kingdom was breathing again. At the old airfield beside the palace, a new project had begun. Leora had gathered builders, engineers, and farmers to rebuild the great power core. Daniel stood with her, checking blueprints drawn on wide cloths spread over a wooden table. "The new energy lines will feed the city first," he said. "Then the outer villages. We should keep them simple this time, so people everywhere can maintain them without waiting for orders." Leora listened closely. "Let the people be part of it," she said. "If they build it with their own hands, they will guard it with their hearts." The workers began assembling the power engines. Sparks danced as metal met metal, and the hum of machines slowly filled the air. For many of them, it was the first time they had seen light return to the towers. When the system finally came alive, a low glow spread over the city's rooftops. People stopped in the streets and lifted their heads, amazed. That evening, Queen Althea stood with her daughter and Daniel on the palace terrace. The glow of the power core reflected on their faces. The queen placed her hands on the edge of the balcony. "I used to believe a ruler must stand above all," she said quietly. "But I see now that no crown has meaning unless it bends to serve the people below it." She turned to Daniel. "You have changed us, even if you do not like being called a hero." Daniel smiled modestly. "I did only what anyone should do, Your Majesty. Sometimes one small act of kindness can mend what an army cannot." Leora looked at him with gentle warmth. "You taught me that strength is not in command, but in love." In the days that followed, the city glowed brighter each night. Travelers returned, trade reopened, and music filled the streets again. Queen Althea sent envoys to the distant provinces, not with soldiers but with healers and teachers. The message was clear. Elorian had chosen to rebuild through peace. Daniel spent his mornings at the workshops teaching young engineers how to handle the ancient machines. The students respected him deeply, though he never raised his voice. Children often followed him, asking questions and running ahead to show what they had built. Sometimes, when the work ended for the day, he sat at the edge of the river, watching the water reflect the golden lanterns from the city walls. Leora visited him often. Together, they talked about the world beyond Elorian. She wanted to open the old flight paths once again and send peaceful ships to distant nations. Daniel promised to help her design one that could fly faster and safer than anything before. One afternoon, the queen held a great gathering in the square. Thousands of people filled the space, waving bright ribbons. Leora stood with Daniel by her side as the queen spoke to the crowd. "Long ago we forgot how to trust each other," she began. "Fear made us build walls not only around our homes but around our hearts. Yet today, I stand before you because love broke through those walls. My daughter has returned, and the man who saved her has reminded me what it means to be human. From this day forward, let no name stand above another. Let kindness be our crown." Cheers rose through the air. Leora reached for her mother's hand, and together they faced the crowd. Daniel stepped back slightly, watching the faces lit by hope. For a moment, he thought of the empty ruins where he had once lived alone. Now those memories felt far away, as if they belonged to another man. Later, in the quiet of the palace garden, Queen Althea joined Daniel where he was standing near the fountain. "You will always have a place here," she said, "but I know people like you do not stay still for long." He nodded. "There are other places that need rebuilding. There is always something broken somewhere in the world." The queen smiled softly. "Then, promise me one thing. Wherever you go, remember that you will always have a family here in Elorian." As she walked away, Leora came forward. The stars were beginning to appear above them. When you go, she said, you will not go alone. Every heart you touched will travel with you. Daniel looked at her, the faint breeze moving her golden hair. And you will not be alone either, he said. You have given your people something stronger than power. You've given them hope. She reached out her hand, and he took it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of the river and the hum of the city filled the silence. When morning came, Daniel prepared a small craft for travel. The Queen and Leora stood by as he checked the controls, smiled at them both. You have given me a home, he said quietly. Now I will carry a part of it wherever I go. As the craft lifted from the ground, the city below grew smaller, bathed in the warm light of dawn. Leora watched until it became a tiny star in the sky. Then she turned to her mother, tears in her eyes but a smile on her face. He saved me, she whispered. And he saved us all. The Queen placed her arm around her daughter. Together they looked toward the shining horizon where the first light of the new day touched the towers of Alorian. Bright and alive once more.